Jerusalem, a city revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims, each faith laying claim to its stones, each drawn by its sacred history. For Jews, it's the city of David, the heart of their prayers. For Christians, it's where Jesus lived, died, and they believe rose again. For Muslims, it's Al-Quds, the site of the Prophet Muhammad's ascension. Yet this shared reverence has rarely meant peace. Jerusalem has been a crucible of conflict, its walls built and rebuilt through centuries of conquest. By the late 11th century, the city was under Fatimid control. Christian pilgrims could visit, but the journey was perilous. Far away, a new threat emerged: the Seljuk Turks, disrupting pilgrimage routes and threatening the Byzantine Empire. This shift sent shockwaves through Christendom, igniting a fervor that would soon focus on Jerusalem. In the minds of medieval Christians, Jerusalem was more than a city. It was the earthly symbol of heaven itself. To lose it was unthinkable, to reclaim it, a divine mission. This potent mix of faith, politics, and fear set the stage for a movement unlike any before. Soon a call would go out, promising redemption and glory to those who would take up the cross and march east. The world was about to witness the birth of the Crusades. The First Crusade was born from decades of religious passion and political turmoil. In 1095, Byzantine Emperor Alexios I appealed to Pope Urban II for help against the Seljuk Turks. The Pope saw an opportunity not just to aid the East, but to unite Christendom and channel Europe's violence into a holy cause. At the Council of Clermont, Urban's speech electrified the crowd. He promised spiritual rewards, remission of sins, for those who would liberate Jerusalem. The call resonated across Europe. Knights, nobles, peasants, all were swept up in the fervor. Deus Vult, God wills it, became their rallying cry. Preachers spread the message, often exaggerating tales of Christian suffering in the East. The crusade became a volatile mix of pilgrimage and holy war, driven by faith, greed, and the promise of adventure. What began as a plea for mercenaries became a mass movement. The march to Jerusalem had begun. The First Crusade was less an army, more a migration, waves of people heading east. The People's Crusade, led by Peter the Hermit, was a disaster. Ill-equipped, undisciplined, and responsible for massacres of Jews in Europe before being destroyed in Anatolia. The main force, led by nobles like Godfrey of Bouillon and Raymond of Toulouse, faced a grueling journey. Thousands of miles, hostile lands, starvation and disease. They besieged Nicaea, then Antioch, where hunger and despair nearly broke them. Only a supposed miracle, the discovery of the Holy Lance, revived their spirits, leading to a desperate victory. The campaign forged the Crusaders into a hardened, fanatical force, but at a terrible cost. By the time they reached Jerusalem in 1099, their numbers were decimated. Yet, every hardship only deepened their conviction that they were God's chosen instruments. At last, the battered army crested the hills of Judea and saw their sacred prize, Jerusalem. The final test awaited. The city's fate, and their own, hung in the balance. On June 7, 1099, the Crusaders reached Jerusalem. Exhausted, many wept at the sight of the city they'd suffered so much to reach. But Jerusalem was a fortress, massive walls, high ground, and a determined Fatimid garrison led by Iftikhar al-Dawla. The defenders expelled local Christians, poisoned wells, and prepared for a siege. The Crusaders faced brutal conditions: searing heat, scarce water, disease, and death. Morale plummeted as the reality of their situation set in. Yet religious zeal kept them going. Priests led processions around the city, chanting prayers, as defenders mocked them from the walls. The Crusaders saw themselves not just as soldiers, but as pilgrims on the brink of a holy destiny. The siege became a test of faith as much as of arms. With no reinforcements and time running out, desperation mounted. The city's defenders prepared for a long fight. The Crusaders prepared for a final assault. The stage was set for a battle that would echo through history. Time was running out. A Fatimid relief army was on the way. The Crusaders had to act. Their first assault failed. Ladders and courage were no match for Jerusalem's walls and Greek fire. The key was siege towers, but there was no timber nearby. Then, fortune intervened. A Genoese fleet arrived with supplies, and Crusader scouts found a hidden forest. Hope revived. The Crusaders built two massive towers, one for Godfrey's army, one for Raymond's. Knights and commoners worked side by side, racing against time as defenders harassed them. The camp was tense, filled with prayer and anticipation. On July 13th, the towers were ready, covered in wet hides to resist fire, They were pushed toward the walls under cover of darkness. The final bloody assault was about to begin. The fate of Jerusalem would be decided at dawn. At dawn on July 14, 1099, the final assault began. Catapults hurled stones, towers creaked forward, and defenders rained arrows and fire. Raymond's tower stalled, but on the north, Godfrey's reached the wall. After brutal fighting, Crusaders dropped a bridge onto the battlements and stormed inside. The city's defenses collapsed. The Crusaders poured in. What followed was a massacre. Years of suffering and rage exploded in violence. Men, women, and children were killed without mercy in streets, homes, and holy places. Muslims fled to Al-Aqsa Mosque. Crusaders broke in and slaughtered them. The Jewish community was burned alive in their synagogue. Chroniclers described the bloodshed with grim pride, seeing it as divine justice. For 2 days the killing continued. Jerusalem, the city of peace, was awash in blood. The Crusaders had claimed their prize, but at what cost? In the aftermath, the Crusaders faced the challenge of ruling a devastated city. Survivors were forced to clear the corpses. The city was cleansed and remade. Raymond of Toulouse refused the crown. Godfrey of Bouillon became advocate of the Holy Sepulchre. After Godfrey's death, Baldwin became the first Latin king of Jerusalem, founding a feudal monarchy. The Crusader states, Outremer, were born, a European enclave in hostile territory. Jerusalem's religious landscape was transformed, mosques became churches, the Dome of the Rock was crowned with a cross, and a Latin patriarch replaced the Orthodox. Pilgrims arrived under Crusader protection, but the city was now an island in a sea of enemies. Its survival depended on constant reinforcements and massive castles. For a time the kingdom thrived, but its bloody foundation ensured perpetual conflict. News of Jerusalem's fall shocked the Islamic world. A catastrophe, a humiliation, a call for vengeance. The Muslim response was slow. Rivalries and divisions prevented unity. The Crusaders exploited these divisions, playing Muslim rulers against each other. But the loss of Jerusalem became a rallying cry. A new ideology of jihad emerged, calling for resistance. Leaders like Zangi and his son Nur al-Din began uniting Muslim lands. The ultimate champion was Saladin, who united Egypt and Syria, encircling the Crusader kingdom. In 1187, Saladin crushed the Crusaders at Hattin and retook Jerusalem. Unlike the Crusaders, Saladin showed mercy, allowing inhabitants to ransom themselves. His clemency earned respect, even in Europe. The cycle of holy war and vengeance had begun. The fall of Jerusalem in 1099 was a turning point. Europe's first major expansion since Rome, and the start of centuries of conflict. The massacre left a deep scar on the Muslim world, hardening identities and fueling cycles of holy war. Before the crusade, coexistence and exchange were possible. After, violence and division became the norm. Crusade and jihad became rallying cries, perpetuating conflict for generations. The events of 1099 warn of the dangers of religious extremism and the ease with which faith can be twisted into violence. Yet even in darkness, there were choices. Saladin's mercy contrasted with Crusader brutality. The lesson is timeless. True holiness lies not in conquest but in recognizing our shared humanity. Peace demands more courage than war, the courage to understand, forgive, and coexist. The stones of Jerusalem bear witness to both our worst and our best. The quest for peace remains the city's greatest challenge and its greatest hope.